Thaddeus Bramwell had lived alone for a decade on his 3,000-acre ranch, a legacy carved from nothing by his grandfather. The rolling hills and grazing cattle were his world, a sanctuary of silence since his wife Martha's death. His nearest neighbor was 15 miles south, and that suited him fine. Solitude was his companion, his fences taller than any man could climb. But on this dusty afternoon, as he mended wire along his property line, Thad saw something that shattered his quiet life. 12 women staggering across the valley toward his homestead. They moved like wounded animals, their once bright saloon dresses torn and stained with dirt and blood. One limped, supported by 2 others, another pressed a bloodied cloth to her face. Thad's weathered hands tightened on his tools. Nobody came to his ranch. Not anymore. He walked to his porch, rifle never far from his side, and watched them approach. These weren't ordinary travelers. Women didn't wander the territory alone, especially not saloon girls, and especially not running from something. The leader, a woman with auburn hair and fierce green eyes, stopped 50 yards from the house. Her hands rose, weaponless, but her stance was defiant. "Mister, we need help," she called, voice strong despite her exhaustion. "We've been riding all night. Some of these girls won't make it much further." Thad studied them. Bruises marked their faces, blood soaked their clothes. The youngest, barely 18, had terror etched into her features, reminding him of Martha at that age, hopeful, vulnerable. "Where'd you come from?" he asked, though he suspected the answer. "Devil's Creek," the woman replied. "The Silver Dollar." Thad's jaw tightened. The Silver Dollar wasn't just a saloon, it was a prison with painted walls and piano music. Women went in, but they didn't come out, not alive. "Who's following you?" "Men who think they own us," she said, her eyes flashing with fear and rage. The distant thunder of hoofbeats echoed across the valley. The women froze, some whimpering, the youngest collapsing to her knees. Pursuers were coming, and they'd be here within the hour. Thad made his choice in a heartbeat. "Get inside. Now." The auburn-haired woman, introducing herself as Cordelia, barked orders, helping the injured to their feet. Soon, 12 frightened women crowded his front room, eyes darting to the windows like trapped animals. Thad bolted the door and opened his gun cabinet. His house, built to withstand Indian raids and rustlers, had thick log walls and narrow windows designed for defense. It would hold, for a while. "How many men?" he asked Cordelia, loading his Winchester. "6, maybe 7, she said, bandaging another woman's split lip. "But Silas Morrison doesn't let his property walk away." Thad's blood chilled. Morrison. A name whispered in town, a man who owned half the county through fear and violence. "These girls aren't property," he said quietly. Cordelia's eyes met his, surprised. "Tell that to the law." Morrison owned Sheriff Hackett, too. Through the window, Thad saw dust clouds growing larger. The riders were pushing hard, expecting the women to collapse before finding help. But they'd miscalculated. One of the younger girls, Penny, grabbed Cordelia's arm, whispering, "They're gonna kill us all, like they killed Rosie." "What happened to Rosie?" Thad asked. Silence hung heavy. Cordelia's voice was flat. "She tried to leave 3 months ago. Morrison hung her from the saloon balcony, called it suicide." Rage stirred in Thad, a dark fire from his war days he'd buried with Martha. He checked his ammunition. "You won't make it running, not with injured women and Morrison's men on fresh horses." "Then what do you suggest?" Cordelia asked. The hoofbeats grew louder. 7 riders crested the hill, their leader a bear of a man, Silas Morrison himself. He dismounted 50 yards out, his men fanning behind him, hands on their guns. "Bramwell," Morrison's voice boomed, "I know you got something that belongs to me." Thad stepped onto the porch, rifle lowered but ready. "Don't see nothing here that belongs to you." Morrison laughed coldly. 12 of my girls ran off, stole money from my safe. Their tracks lead to your door. Maybe they kept running. Big territory. Don't play games, Morrison growled. Hand them over, or we do this the hard way. What gives you any right to them? Thad asked. Legal contracts. They owe me for room, board, clothes, protection. Until that's paid, they're mine. Slavery ended with the war, Morrison. This ain't slavery. It's business. One of Morrison's men shifted nervously. Boss, let's just take them and go. Morrison backhanded him. I decide what's complicated. These girls need to learn consequences. Thad's resolve hardened. He thought of Rosie, hanging while Morrison lied about her death. I'll pay their debts, he said suddenly. Morrison's eyebrows rose. All 12. You know what that costs. Name your price. For a moment, Morrison seemed to consider it. Then his face darkened. This ain't about money anymore. It's about respect. They need to learn they can't run from me. Thad's finger tightened on his rifle. And if I say no? Morrison's men drew their guns, 7 against 1. Then you die with them, Morrison said. Last chance. Cordelia stepped onto the porch, shotgun in hand. The door opened wider, revealing the other women, armed with Thad's weapons. Morrison's smile faltered. Looks like the rabbits found teeth, he sneered. You taught us well, Cordelia called. Survival of the meanest, right? Put those guns down, Morrison snapped. We're choosing to fight, said Belle, a scarred woman in her 30s, her voice steady. Thad felt pride swell. These women, beaten and terrorized, were standing their ground. Morrison, he said, you got 10 seconds to leave my land. One of Morrison's men made a fatal mistake, aiming at Penny, the trembling 17-year-old in the doorway. Thad's rage erupted. In one motion, he fired, hitting the man's shoulder. Chaos exploded. Morrison's men unleashed a barrage, bullets splintering the log walls. Thad pushed Cordelia inside as glass rained down. Stay low, he shouted. Don't shoot unless you got a clear target. Morrison took cover behind a water trough, barking orders. 2 men flanked left, another headed for the barn. Burn it! Morrison yelled. Smoke them out. Thad's heart sank. The barn, full of hay and dry wood, would ignite fast, spreading to the house. They'd be forced into the open, easy targets. We can't stay, Cordelia said, reading his mind. Then, new hoofbeats sounded from the north, rhythmic, organized. Not Morrison's men. U.S. Marshal Clayton Reed appeared with 6 federal lawmen, badges glinting. But instead of relief, Thad felt dread. Morrison waved a white cloth. Marshal Reed, thank God. This rancher's harboring stolen property, threatening commerce. Reed, lean with cold eyes, dismounted. Lay down your weapons and come out peacefully, he called. He'll hand us back to Morrison, Cordelia whispered. Federal law says we're bound by contracts. Thad thought fast. Marshals followed procedure, they couldn't shoot without cause. Marshal, he called, these women seek protection from illegal imprisonment and violence. Lies. Morrison shouted. They're thieves and contract breakers. Reed raised a hand. Lay down weapons. We'll sort this out by territorial law. Thad knew territorial law favored Morrison. The women would be returned, and he'd face charges. But the women weren't the same terrified figures from that morning. Belle checked her rifle with steady hands. Cordelia's jaw was set. Even Penny watched the yard alertly. They'd tasted freedom and wouldn't surrender at point. One of Morrison's men, thinking the marshals ensured victory, stood and approached with a grin. Time to go home, girls. Belle shot him in the leg. He screamed, dropping. Reed's hand went to his gun. Federal officers under fire, he shouted. Secure the area. The situation was impossible, facing Morrison's killers and federal lawmen. Thad turned to Cordelia. You still got Morrison's money? She nodded. Every penny. Why? Thad smiled grimly. We're about to make Reed an offer. Marshal Reed, Thad called, I'm filing a formal complaint under federal jurisdiction. Reed paused, his men still advancing cautiously. What's the complaint, Bramwell? Human trafficking, forced prostitution, murder. Morrison's holding women against their will, killing those who escape. That's a lie. Morrison roared. We can prove it, Cordelia said from the window. Morrison killed Rosie 3 months ago, made it look like suicide. We got witnesses, Bell added. And proof he's been stealing our earnings. I need to see evidence, Reed said. Cordelia stepped onto the porch, hands raised, carrying a satchel. This has Morrison's account books, proof of theft and payments to Sheriff Hackett. Reed flipped through the pages, his face darkening. Entries showed systematic theft, bribes, and coded references to violence. Look at July 15th, Cordelia said. The day Rosie died. Reed found the page, his expression turning to stone.